by making Cavill this guy again. Hello and welcome to another episode of With Enough Prep Time. I'm your host, the Nerd Man, and today, this beautiful summer day, we're going to be talking a little bit about Jupiter's Legacy, the new television show that's just come on Netflix. I wanted to do a quick non-spoiler review of this show because I think it's an important show that I really want to talk about. I think it's one of those kind of shows that I think is going to become a little bit of a classic. And I thought I'd kind of get in there quick, actually speak about, why, basically. Needless to say, I'm very, very impressed by the show. And I'm just trying to find that before I kind of go into exactly why. Let me find out quickly. Yeah, more okay. So it's one of those things where you just have to find out like very, very quickly what you're trying to figure out. But yeah, I'm always forgetting things on YouTube, unfortunately. But and this one was put together very haphazardly. But I mean, I have a few themes that I want to explore in this. Basically, I wrote something down. I hope it kind of helps my kind of memory in what I'm trying to say here about this review. This is one in a line of many, many deconstructions of the superhero. We've seen this done very, very often recently, and specifically with the character of Superman. Superman has to be the most important, no matter what anyone says about Batman. It's clear to me after the recent spate of superhero shows like The Boys, like the most recent one, Invincible, like Brightburn, that there is this irresistible urge within our kind of postmodern, post-structuralist culture to deconstruct heroes. And I think a lot of people are against deconstructions of heroes. I personally am not. But I think you need the constructed heroes to contrast with the deconstructed heroes. And to be quite fair, with the recent spate of deconstructions of Superman and superheroes, I've been quite bored, to be honest. A lot of people say, great things about Invincible, and I think, yeah, it's compelling, and I'd give it a good review, and I'd say each episode is relatively entertaining, but it really is more of the same, more of this kind of notion: what if Superman was evil? And it's kind of getting boring to me, and it's the most obvious type of deconstruction you can do of the Superman character and of the Superman archetype, right? It's this notion that, yeah, Superman has great power. With great power, one thinks that one can be easily corrupted. So therefore, Superman must be corrupted, and therefore he can't be good. He has to be some kind of evil character. Now, I want to go just a little bit into what the deconstruction of the hero really is, because people try and say like a deconstruction of the hero is making Superman into an anti-hero. Well, that's part of it, but it's not necessarily the case, right? And then others say, they just use the word deconstruction without kind of really unpacking the meaning of it when it comes to comic book characters. And the reason I think this is so kind of interesting to talk about right now is because after watching this show, and I think about, things that certain directors in DC have talked about of what they want to do with DC mythology. People like Zack Snyder, who says that they want to make this kind of grand mythology, this kind of more grounded reality of these superheroes. And for them, and for Zack Snyder, after watching a show like this, I think he should really rethink his whole kind of philosophy and approach to characters like this. Because in his deconstruction, he wants to his version of deconstruction is grounding the characters, grounding them in reality, right? And he grounds Superman in reality, and the only way he can think to do that is by making people like Pa Kent not the greatest dad in, like one of the great dads, or so should I say, one of the great dads in comic book history, or in fact, the archetype of the mentor dad who teaches their son great lofty values, right? So he has to take that down and just make him a normal American dad. He has to take Superman down and just make him a normal human being with the kind of flaws and doubts that normal doubts that human beings have. He doesn't actually play with the archetype of Superman. He transports a new character into the Superman mythos, giving that character Superman's story and giving that character Superman's powers, but not actually presenting the character and what he actually means and why he was actually created in the first place by Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel, right? I know I'm going a long way about this, but I think it's important because Jupiter's legacy has done something really, really interesting with Superman, or with the Superman archetype, that is so different from what I've seen recently. And it doesn't surprise me because Mark Millar is one of the few comic book writers who has actually done a deconstruction of Superman as an archetype, as well as superheroes in general, that is actually really, really interesting, and that's Red Son. He's also done other deconstructions that are not Superman based of superheroes, such as Kick-Ass and things like that. But in general, Red Son is his actual deconstruction of Superman, and you'll find that it's another novel, interesting deconstruction, which doesn't just ask the simple question, what if Superman was evil? Very, very boring question when it comes down to it. We know what would happen if Superman was evil. He'd either take over the world, or or we'd all be in peril and danger. It's a very easy kind of thought process to have. Or, he'd be some vain celebrity like, Homelander and be only out for himself, it's very easy to think what Superman would be like if he's evil and use that as a kind of means to deconstruct him. It's done over and over and over again, as I said, but Mark Millar, one of the writers, Red Son, who did a really, really good job of deconstructing Superman by saying, what if that little rocket landed in communist Russia? But Superman still had those same kind of values and he played with this battle between nurture and nature, right? What makes the hero? Is it nurture, i.e. being born in the Soviet Union, or is it nature, that he was just had this good spirit inbuilt into him from birth? And that kind of conflict plays out in Red Son, so that you see that this Superman is genuinely trying to do good, but is corrupted by an evil ideology, i.e. the communist Soviet ideology, or at least a misguided one. So that's a very, very interesting story, and a compelling story that is very, very different from the normal run-of-the-mill kind of stuff that you get with the deconstructions of Superman. Then you have other people who've done really interesting versions of deconstructions of Superman, such as Alan Moore, with Watchmen. But his lesson was, completely ignored by comic book writers, which was, this is what would happen if you take superheroes down into a grounded, kind of more cynical world. And he didn't want that. He wanted this to be a kind of one-off Elseworld story where Dr. Manhattan played this kind of role of a Superman character, and what a Superman would kind of be in real life, and the impact that he might have on the world, and the global conflicts such as the Cold War. You also have other ones that came after, But what you got after these really original guys like Alan Moore, Mark Millar, the Dark Knight Returns kind of versions of these deconstructions, is that you got people trying to copy it over and over and over again until we reach the people like Zack Snyder, who aren't very creative with it. All they can think to do is do some kind of injustice version of Superman where he's evil, and then we know the same story applies. Now, Jupiter's so going back to Jupiter's legacy and what we mean by the deconstructing the hero. It's a story in which we question the virtue of the aspirational hero. So a story in which we question the virtue of aspirational heroes. We look upon the myths handed down to us, like Superman, with antipathy and with a cynical eye, and assume the greatest champions of fiction are ultimately corrupt somehow, right? So Superman is perhaps, as I said, the target of this has been the target of this treatment most often, and I have to say, again, I've been the most typical version of this is the "What if Superman is evil" story, and that in recent times we've had a plethora of these different types of tellings of the Superman being evil. Again, we've just finished off Invincible. And, something about me, I didn't want to do another kind of video on Invincible because I was just like, I mean, it's interesting. I like it, kind of. It's entertaining because I'm a comic book fan, but haven't I seen this before? Didn't I just see this with The Boys? Didn't I just see this with other things? And it kind of just felt to me like an empty gesture, unimportant, forgettable kind of fast food for the brain. And I just didn't want to, kind of engage with its cynicism anymore, really. But it does have some interesting elements to it, like the relationship between Omni-Man and his son. I get it. I'm not saying anyone who likes the show, I think I completely understand why you like the show. But it just struck me because I've been having this urge to see a Superman story or a story about superheroes, aspirational heroes like Captain America, like Luke Skywalker, like Wonder Woman, like Superman, told in which they can actually shine as heroes. And we don't have to be ashamed of the fact that they have heroic virtues. And that we can look at those characters who are virtuous, who have heroic ideals, characters who are incorruptible. And we can look at them as complex characters rather than simplistic characters who are too unreal to actually exist in the world and are unworthy of exploration. And Jupiter's, the reason I say that Jupiter's legacy is so important is because instead of asking that simplistic question, the end that always ends up in nihilistic storytelling. What if our heroes are evil? What if they're not as good as we think they are? What if they're, this, that, and the other? Jupiter's legacy actually tries to deconstruct the Superman mythos by asking the question, what if this superhero actually lived by his ideals? How would he continue to exist within this world, this flawed world, within this divided world that we see, with so much division in the world at the moment between black and white, woman and man, gay and straight, liberal or progressive or right wing. So much tension in the world between people who believe absolutely in things, and what if this man lived by a moral code, right? What if a superhero existed in this world and lived by a moral code, such as I won't kill the supervillain? What would be the reception of the world to him, and what struggles would that individual go through? And it made me think that, dude, whoever is at DC, right, comics, and wants to tell a compelling Superman story, a compelling modern day Superman story, find writers like these. Find writers who can adapt, who have the kind of idea of thinking just beyond simplistic kind of notions of Superman, where all we can do is tear his morals and tear his code down because it's too antiquated to fit into modern society. So yes, this is my this is my kind of this is what I my thoughts basically on this program. I don't want to say much more. I'm going to go into a much more in-depth kind of discussion of this later. But it's a very, very good show that asks a different question of Superman for once. That's the premise of the show. The premise of the show is, what if Superman, or what if a Superman like figure actually kept his code? What would be the implications for his family? What would be the implications of society? What if he stubbornly refused to ever not just be a good man? And I think that is the story you need to tell with Superman. It's a story of a man who stubbornly refuses, even though he's got all these powers and could be easily corrupted, to never give up his notion of good, to be incorruptible in that way. And what pains would he suffer by doing that? And the interesting thing about it is that what you see in Jupiter's Legacy is, you see the often made critique about Superman actually come to fruition in a very rich and interesting storytelling manner, which is the fact that he's so good, the fact that he has this moral code, this unshakable moral code, is what makes him flawed, and is what gives him problems. So that is the kind of storytelling, and I really hope that DC, people like Zack Snyder, take heed of somebody actually doing something different. The guy who wrote the book on deconstructing these characters has now come back and shown you how to do it again in a much more subtle and interesting way than we've seen previously. It's a much more elegant deconstruction and a much more elegant story of a good man who kept his ideals in a less than perfect world. I've only got to episode 3 so far, right? And of course, there is the common kind of stuff with the rest of his family. That there's a really interesting character in his daughter who plays more up to the common tropes of these kind of deconstructions of superheroes these days. She's a model, she's into drugs, she's doing all of this kind of stuff that she can't handle, being the daughter of this great pantheon or paragon of virtue that her father is, and she's unable to handle that, right? And so again, that is a character that plays much more into a character that you'd find probably on The Boys, or you'd find in Invincible, or other shows like that. So it kind of balances both worlds. But in the end, the concept comes down to, what if there was a Superman figure who remained good, who remained virtuous? And I think it's a very, very interesting idea. And I hope he keeps to that in this series, and we'll see where it goes from there. Apart from that, I'm gonna just mention some people. So Nerdman, Jupiter's Legacy is one of my favorite books. How could you keep us out of this one? How could you keep me out of this one? Oh, okay, we'll talk about it when I do the spoilers review. Jupiter Legacy looks nonsense. Today's streaming to navigate DCU future, sir. Why Warners hate Superman? Yeah. Are the fanboys Superman, right? Akanksha, yes, it's kind of nonsense, but still good. the book I'm in, yeah. Uh, Alan Moore actually hated writing Watchmen. He hated the fact the comic was the reason that the Dark Age of comics started. He did spend much of the '90s trying to make people love Superman again. Yeah, I'm not suggesting. That's exactly my point. It's these creative people who deconstructed these superheroes first, who did it for kind of really rich and philosophical reasons and were exploring superhero mythology properly. And then you come afterwards and you get these kind of deconstructions that just don't live up to it. I look at something like Deadpool, or I look at something like uh the boys and all of that stuff, and I like it, and I think it's interesting. But again, it's that same thing of, this has been done before over and over again. And I know each of these writers think they're being really novel and original, but actually they're not. They're being really uninteresting about it. And, when you add that kind of layer of the sarcasm and the humor and the cynicism to this story, it takes away from me from some of the meaning and fun of what it is to read comic books and to believe in these heroes. And for me, the really sad thing about it is, I don't mind these shows existing. I'm happy that people enjoy them. But I really wish DC wouldn't go down the same line of making their characters into these deconstructions as well. I look at something like Suicide Squad, which is just it's not taking this stuff seriously. It's not taking any of these heroes kind of, or villains kind of seriously, and what they mean and their implications and stuff like that. It's just mocking and cynical, quite frankly. And it has no meaning. It has no purpose. Ultimately, it's vapid. And that's my problem with this kind of presentation of these superheroes. These days, like something like Suicide Squad, really. And that's why I'm just saying, I hope DC can look at something like this and say, hey, we can explore these heroes in interesting and mythological ways while still keeping to what fundamentally makes them them. Even though this is very much a deconstruction as well. So don't get me wrong. To me, Jupiter's Legacy is Alex Ross and Mark Waid's Kingdom Come, but with Mark Millar writing instead of Ross and Waid. Yeah, I agree. Yes, do deconstructionist, and that's another great deconstructionist work, which is Kingdom Come, or a critique of deconstructionist work. Please remember to like and subscribe. Thanks so much for all your comments here. Yes, do deconstructionist work, but also give us a reason to like those characters. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Alan Moore always hated himself for being the one who thought of the Dark Angel, right? Started the Dark Age of comics. Yep. And then I'm going to leave after this. Also, the reason I hate the Dark Age of comics, Frank Miller did not change Batman for the better. In fact, he changed Batman for the worse. I don't think Frank Miller is really the one who's, I would blame for this, because I think he did something original back then. But the way it's been kind of taken up, it's just lost all, as I said, it's lost all meaning. And when you're actually making Superman films like Man of Steel, attempting to copy the deconstructions of the original hero in the kind of main continuity, rather than trying to actually explore what does it mean to be this kind of virtuous man, I think you're going down the wrong route. That's what you need to explore in a Superman story. What does it actually mean? What sacrifices do you have to make to continue to be this virtuous? And is having that kind of virtue, having that kind of optimistic opinion of humanity, having this kind of opinion where I will not kill, I will not break my code, what consequences does that have for the world and for yourself? I think that's an important Superman story that needs to be told, and it's just, and I think it's the better Superman story to be told, rather than, oh, I'll just have him snap Zod's neck, for instance. It's like, okay, cool. What does that tell us about anything about Super? How does that reach deep into Superman's soul? Doesn't. Miller only wrote Batman good when Dennis O'Neil, the person who actually saved Batman, was the editor of Batman Comics. Yeah, I can agree with that. What's up, man? Hope all is well. Yeah, thanks, man. What's Jupiter's Legacy? It's a really good show on Netflix. Check it out. Have you been to Weenie Hut Juniors? No, I have never been to Weenie Hut Juniors. Um, uh, I don't like how Frank Miller wrote Superman in The Dark Knight Returns like a cop for the government. I don't mind how he wrote Superman in Dark Knight Returns. I think it's an interpretation, and it's an interesting one, but certainly not the kind of one that needs to be continuously explored. It's like it's a one-off graphic novel. It worked for that graphic novel. The relationship between Superman and Batman worked in that graphic novel, but that's not a mainstream version of Superman. It's a kind of version of Superman. You can take those implications. If you take this, I fight for truth, justice, and the American way, and he's this American hero, and all of that kind of thing. You could see that there's an interpretation where, yeah, he would just follow the government's rules and not allow for vigilantes to roam the street just doing what they want. So, okay, valid interpretation, but we also know that Superman is usually better than that. He's usually not somebody who would just be a government stooge. Okay, not really. Before Miller, many writers did Batman Dark. Just read Miller, Holy Terror. You will lose respect for him immediately. Oh, okay. I don't know which one that is. What you think of Kal-El being black? I've spoken about it. Like, go check out my video on it, man. I've spoken about that a lot. I hope if Kal-El and not Kal-El, Clark Kent from Kansas. Look, I don't want any black Superman that is Clark Kent, Val-Zod, or anything else until we've got a mainstream, proper version of Superman to lead the Justice League into, lead into a Justice League film. You cannot escape. You cannot run away from. You cannot hide from classical Superman and him leading the Justice League. Doing anything else, trying anything else, I think it's almost guaranteed it will fail. Now, if they wanted to do a Joker-style movie where they explored the idea of a black Superman type hero landing in, say, Detroit rather than Kansas, great. I would love that, but I need that main Superman there, to shine a light on this deconstruction, because that would be a deconstruction of Superman. It would be something where you're questioning the virtue of the hero based on the imperfection of the world. You're testing that hero. You're testing that hero's virtues and moral code and his resilience to it, based on how imperfect and immoral the world we live in is. So a black Superman is perfectly fine, again, to explore. He comes in the 1930s. He's black. He's alien. He's Superman. What would that be like? What would his perception of the world be like, etc.? But if you do that, right, you still have to have that main Superman that he can reflect off, so that you can see how they connect and how they are distinguished from each other. Do you watch SpongeBob? No. I agree. I think Cavill will be back, hopefully. The Snyder Cut was a huge hit in China, to be honest, all over the world, but Warner Brothers have huge egos. Yep, I agree. They're not interested, sadly. That's true. And last but not least, just read Frank Miller's Holy Terror or All-Star Batman and Robin. In those comics, Batman beats children and kills. Superman is a rapist. Wonder Woman loves being raped by supes. Not joking about these. Wow, that's incredible. All right. Terrible. The writers can do good things and they can do terrible things. Jupiter's Legacy happens to be one of the good ones. But thanks so much, guys, for joining me. Please do remember to like, subscribe, share if you want, and also follow me on follow me on Twitter. You can see my Twitter handle there with enough prep time. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, do so. I'll answer back to you any questions you have, and maybe if you want to request videos there, I might be able to do that for you as well. But apart from that, guys, I'm going to see you on the flip side. I have to get to a birthday at the moment, so I'm going to see you on the flip side, and I love you 3000. Peace.